Have you ever wanted to build a little cabin and mixed it with a camper? That's kind of what I was going for. It was a fun build, and I'm happy to take you through the whole process. Let's get started. I found this old trailer frame on Marketplace, and it was exactly what I was looking for. It was cheap. I know it looks bad, but that's just the wood, and the rust, and the bent bumper. But you can fix that. The rust wasn't penetrating through the frame, and the frame was still solid. So I bent the bumper back. It's not perfect, but good enough. I decided I'm not going to use propane with this camper, so I stripped that off and got to work getting rid of that rust. After the rust was gone, all it needed was a nice coat of paint. Well, I guess it needed some wiring too. Gotta let people know when you're stopping and turning. This frame doesn't have brakes, so I'm just using a simple boat trailer wiring harness. Now that the frame's ready, it's on to the floor. For this build, I decided I wanted an insulated floor. The plan is to build a frame with 3/4 inch plywood, insulate it, and then sandwich it between two sheets of 1/4 inch plywood. Pretty close. Looks like I'm gonna have to zip this little corner off. Now I have no idea where you could buy new wheel wells that would fit this, so I figured these should get a good coat of paint before I reuse them. I cut joints in the plywood frame and screwed it together, mainly so it would stay in place while I fastened it to the 1/4 inch ply. The angles on the front of the floor go out to where the propane rack was. Hopefully they'll help with air drag a bit. I used roll-on bed liner to protect the underside of the floor. It took 2 cans, and those were the hardest cans I've ever seen to open in my entire life. By the time the lids were off, the can was basically turned inside out.
Oh, this is the bottom?
Yeah.
Oh, gotcha.
That's what this is
Okay.
for.
Ah, I see.
It's for waterproofing. I'm just running in a few stainless steel screws from the bottom around the edge to hold the floor down for now. Then on the center, I drill down just deep enough so that the head won't stick up above the floor and run a self-tapper down through that. Later on, I'll anchor the whole system a lot better. On my other camper build, a lot of people commented that putting the vinyl down first and then building right over top of it would be a lot easier. So I thought I'd try that on this one. I think it worked out pretty well. Lay these out. 35 and 5/8. Working with small lumber like 2x2s, every single hole has to be pilot drilled and countersunk. That way you don't split the boards. These wheel wells make building the sidewalls kind of goofy. The easiest way seems to be to build the walls right on the floor around them. That way everything's in place where it belongs. Right now, I'm just clamping things down, just in case there's any changes that need to be made. It's nice to not have to tear something totally apart. I love having a lot of clamps around. They're really handy. I just realized I made a big mistake. My original plan was for the sheeting to come from the top of this wall down and cover the side of the floor, land flush right here with the edge of the floor. I forgot my plan and forgot to subtract that from the length of my studs. So now, instead of one 4-foot sheet covering all that, the 4-foot sheet will just cover the wall. So I'm gonna have to cut 1 inch and 5/16 of every stinking stud. So I guess I've got to tear this thing apart now. You know, there's always something that goes wrong on a project, especially when you hurry. It's whether you can fix it or not that really matters. Luckily, this was an easy fix and it reminded me to slow down. Much better. I'm going to pull this 2x2 out because an actual 2x4 will fit in this space almost perfect. That'll give this a little more strength right here. A little more weight, but probably worth it. I'm gonna go 5/12 for my roof pitch. So I'm going to lay this out like this and mark it out, but I think what would be better would be if this was above my truss so I could trace the end of the wall. Yes. That's the way to figure it out, like that. So now I need to fasten this truss together with a gusset. Before I screw this together, I'm just going to mark another one out. That's a huge difference. That'll make it a lot easier to cut this end off. This one's going to sit right like it is. The ones on the inside that'll go against the wall instead of the end wall, they're going to have to be notched so it'll be flat here, and this part will come down and butt up against that. So I'm just going to make a straight line along here so I know where to cut the bird's mouth. Bring my speed square out to a 5/12, right there. Edge of my wall. That's the inside edge, and I marked it backwards again. So this gets cut out, this area stays. Really want to make sure that cut doesn't go past either way. That way it doesn't weaken the board any more than you already have by cutting a bird's mouth in it. Just kind of making sure this is as flush with the edge as I can. Then I'm going to screw these down. And then later I'm going to drill some holes through the bottom and put some bolts through the bottom, tighten them down to the top. Just squash this vinyl down pretty good. I'll just work my way around. Probably not really necessary, but I'm going to do it.
The bolts I used are stainless steel, so they should never rust, and then I used nylock lock nuts on it. They're really good, they grip really well. Just to be safe, I threw a second one on each bolt. This should never come apart.
I will eventually be cutting this board out, and that's why it's very important to have this section and this section secured really well, because it's just a short piece of wall. I'm not going to be able to nail my paneling to this little thin piece of plywood. I'd rather have a 2x2 or something. Plus a little extra bracing would help on this. What I'll do is have a 2x2 go across, and then on top of that I'll put a 1x4, run that the length of the trusses and screw them together to help hold them in place while I'm setting my plywood on. We'll just put the bottom at 4'8".
I clamped a 2x2 to the bottom for something to measure from and to keep my marks square.
Oh, you're so helpful. He's so helpful. Oh, sure. So is Mabel. You guys are helpers. Just a second, buddy. All right.
Yeah. It feels like it's getting pretty sturdy. Everything's tied together really well. I have two rafters here, so I need to do something. This is my solution.
Right now, it feels like it's really coming together, but that front end is quickly approaching, and that part is definitely a lot more tricky. For the most part, I like to keep all of my projects simple. The front of this camper was anything but simple. These angles slowed the process down a lot. I'm sure there's a mathematical way to figure everything out, but when you've always tried to keep things simple, you don't tend to learn that. So I did a lot of fitting and marking, but in the long run, it all worked out. Everything came together.
Yeah, that line's good. Okay. Inches.
I almost forgot about my taillights. That would have been a real pain in the neck later on. I'm gonna mark the center of the screw hole so I know where I want the center of the next board. Building something small like this, you really have to think of the process. I could have sheeted the exterior wall, but had I done that, I wouldn't be able to get the interior panels in through that tiny little door without cutting them down. So I figured I'd paint everything up, do a little bit of work outside, some wiring, let the paint dry, and get back to the inside. So this is the bottom side. These wires are kind of short. I want my wiring to come in the top. So what I'm going to do is splice some wires on with a butt splice, and then I'll tuck them down around, follow this edge up. I'm going to pop a hole through here, run the wires out the top. So right now I'm going to start my wiring process. Make sure I leave plenty. A good amount of wire out. The front panel is kind of diamond shaped, and that takes a lot of measurements and a lot of layout to get, but it's really not a big deal. For now, I'm going to leave that panel out so that I can use the opening to film the interior work. This stuff fits in nice. It actually has some give. I wanted to use the paint board, but this actually goes in nicer. This compartment will open from outside. It'll be a bit of a kitchen and probably hold my power source, maybe even some water or a heater. I'm not really sure yet. You might be wondering why I'm wearing a high-vis raincoat to cut trim. Well, that's because the sawdust falls right off of it.
instead of sticking into my shirt. This wheel well would let in a lot of cold air, so it needs some insulation. Hopefully this garbage bag can keep that dust in. I use silicone basically any place there was a joint. Along the corners, behind the trim, on the bottom of the boards. Pretty much everywhere I think a raindrop could get in, I use silicone. Or butyl tape. Just a little something to keep that dust from getting inside of it. Yeah, that's my angle. What that was. I know this isn't the normal way to do this, but I found the foam closure strips bubbled the steel up on the flats. So I cut them up and used good silicone on the flat section and foam under the ribs. Then I clamped it down, screwed the panel down, and let the silicone dry.
Oh, nice. Oh, it might be the paper.
Wow. That, holy crap, that really did some pressure. An inch and 5/8, 2. I'll just bring this up like that. These flaps will fold inside the fan opening, and this little notch I'm cutting out will allow the wire to pass them. Oh, too big a hole. Looks like it'll still work though. Now, all these screws should be covered by the ridge cap. The wheel well on the other side still needs to be covered up and insulated. Now I could just build a box over it, but why not make the best of that space? So what I'm going to do is build some shelves and run power to them. That way I can have a coffee pot over there and I won't even have to get out of bed to turn it on.
That's a lot of light in here. Right now, I think I'm going to leave this compartment the way it is. I need to figure out what I'm going to use for power. I was going to use a power station, kind of leaning towards maybe building out a little solar battery setup instead. But right now, all this light's running off of this little drill battery. That's better. That's nicer on the eyes. I put it up high so that standing here it wouldn't be directly in my eyes, but I probably should have put it a little bit higher yet. I think we're gonna leave this the way it is and move on to the windows and doors. That's the top. Hopefully this one works. Got it.
Charlie, 3. High 5. That's not sharp, is it?
Nah, it shouldn't be.
It's upside down again. No, it's not.
Hey, that's not me. Nope, that's my friend Daniel. Daniel's only 19, but he used to be Amish, so he's been doing steel roofs since he was a little kid. And he's really good at bending the ends to make them look nice. So we're going to swap labor. He's bending my ridge cap and rake trim, and I'm going to wire his little cap. It works out great. He's got a skill I need, I've got a skill he needs. Trade labor, everybody's happy.
Yeah, I'll do it. All right. An inch in.
Yep.
A little more. Yeah. Right there. Good end on your end, or? Right there. Green is stop and turn. Green to red. I use this black wire for ground because I needed something. because of the hole being so close to the ceiling, this is going to hit the ceiling and it's not going to seal up. So I need to cut about 3/8 of an inch off. There we go. Let's give it a try. Boy, that's gonna be really nice. Kind of wish I would have put one in my other camper. So there was really no good way to do this. I could have put it up here, but it would have been much harder to seal around this with the ribbed roof. Where I put it on this flat, it seals really easy. But now you have the problem of the wind wanting to blow up and grab this lid, flip it up, break it. So I could have flipped it around so the wind was catching this, but then if I wanted to use it and it was raining, I wouldn't be able to because the water'd pour in. So I put it so that it opens this way, and then I'm using these little battery tie-down straps. So when it's getting hauled down the road, it'll be strapped down nice and tight. Yeah, that looks better. Perfect. So when I'm transporting it, that won't go anywhere. It's actually pretty roomy in here. That is a twin mattress. I think I could probably put a full in here. But right now, you could set it up like that and sit on it if you wanted. Or it's kind of a threefold. Pull it out. Here's a size comparison between the original camper, the first one I built over there, and the new little mini cabin camper over here. Cabin camper is just over 8 feet long and the same width as the first one, and the other one's just about 10 feet long. Well, that's gonna wrap it up for this video. Next video should be out hopefully not too long from now. I'll get this little guy finished up. If you want to see the original camper, that one, I've got the whole build series, 4 videos, and I'll have it in a playlist in the corner for you. Thanks a lot for watching, and I'll see you next time.